We get lots of questions from our clients about how to rebuild their credit after a consumer proposal or bankruptcy. Even if you haven't filed but you're struggling with poor credit, this show will probably help you too. Maureen Parent is back to answer the top credit repair questions, and it all starts right now.
This is Debt Free in 30. Here's your host, Doug Hoyes.
Maureen, welcome back. So we've had you on the show many times. Usually you are coming to us from your office in Canada in the Ottawa region, but you are actually in studio here in head office in Kitchener. So we are happy to have you here today. So credit repairs, that's something you've ever had a client ask you about ever?
No, never.
All the time. So, so what is the most common question you get asked by either someone who is thinking about filing a proposal or a bankruptcy, or someone who is in it or is finishing? What's the most common question you get asked?
Well, I get asked, how long will it take to repair my credit, and how long will it be on my credit bureau?
And yes, I would agree that I hear that from absolutely everyone. So, well, why don't we just answer the question then? And then I also want to ask you why people are asking that. Why do we get obsessed with that? But let's start with the obvious answer then. So, okay, if I file a bankruptcy, let's assume it's my first bankruptcy, how long will that appear on my credit report for?
It appears on your credit report for 6 to 7 years from the date of discharge. And I say 6 to 7 years because there's two credit bureaus and they report them slightly differently, but that's.
Yes, that's one of our challenges here is Equifax and TransUnion do things slightly differently. So 6 years at a minimum from the date of discharge. If you have a first-time bankruptcy with no surplus income, you're eligible to be discharged in 9 months. 9 months plus 6 years, that puts you at roughly 7 years.
Right.
And so if you ask the average person on the street, they would say 7 years. That's where they're getting it from.
Right.
If it's a second-time bankruptcy, or if it's a bankruptcy where you have surplus income, then your bankruptcy could last for 21 months or 24 months or 36 months, in which case that time period is extended. It could be on your credit report for 7 years, 8 years, 9 years, whatever.
Well, and a second bankruptcy is on for 14.
Sorry, and a second bankruptcy is 14. So it's double roughly what a first one is.
Yeah.
Okay.
After a longer bankruptcy, because it's a second time.
Yeah. The minimum second time bankruptcy period is 2 years. Did I get that right? Mm-hmm. Glad I'm getting the answers right here. So you're looking at 8 years. Well, so you're looking at 14 years regardless if it's a second bankruptcy. Doesn't matter what the circumstances were. Okay. Now a consumer proposal. How long is a consumer proposal reporting on your credit report?
It reports on your credit bureau 6 years from the date of filing or 3 years from date of completion, whichever is earlier.
So if I get my proposal paid off in a year, it's going to be on there for 4 years.
Right.
Simple as that. If it takes me the full 5 years to pay it off, then it'll be on there for 6 years. That's the maximum. Okay. Yeah. So I don't know if this is on our cue cards or not. I didn't look at our cue cards before we started the show, so I usually don't. Why do you think it is that the most common question you get asked is, how long is it going to take to repair my credit after filing? Why is this the big obsession that everybody has?
Of course, I think I always say this, there's always layers to that. I think we're programmed to believe that a credit score reflects our financial ability. There's also the feeling that if we don't have the ability to access credit, then if something goes wrong, we don't have a safety net. So there's a definite fear that we will get rejected for getting something that we want. We won't be able to get a new rental. I think people will think poorly of us.
Well, and I think that's the key point, what you just said there, that our credit score is a representation of my worth as a human being.
Yeah, and it's not. No.
Oh, it is, Maureen. It is. It is. I am not a good human being if I don't have a good credit score. It doesn't matter that I'm a good person and I help the poor and I donate to charity and I'm good with my kids and everything. If I don't have a good credit score, then I'm a bad person. And
Or if I don't have a good credit score, I'm not financially responsible. That's also a false belief.
Which I guess kind of dovetails with that first thing. And again, all you got to do is think about it for about 30 seconds. So your pal Warren Buffett, I think you hang out with him in.
I do.
I forget what town he lives in, but so he has, I assume, $1 billion in the bank.
Right.
I don't know. I'm not as tight with him as you are, but I assume he's got $1 billion in the bank, and he doesn't have to worry about his credit score.
No.
Because he's got $1 billion. If he wants to buy an airplane, he just goes and pays cash for it. So is it better to be obsessed about your credit score, or is it better to actually have money in the bank and therefore your credit score doesn't matter? Like for Warren Buffett, it literally doesn't matter. He can buy whatever he wants.
Exactly.
Now, so let's take the scenario where you have no debt at all.
Right.
And you have $1 billion in the bank.
Woohoo!
Which is pretty much your situation, I assume, anyways.
All right.
So would you have a perfect credit score in that scenario?
Probably not, because I'm not using credit.
There you go.
So it'd be like I just graduated from high school.
You're 18 years old. You got no debt, no credit, no nothing. So your credit score you might not have one.
Right.
And if you were to go out and get a cell phone and be a couple of days late with your payment, your credit score might be really bad. It might be 400.
Right.
Because your credit score doesn't show that you've got $1 billion in the bank.
Exactly.
And that's why, to me, it's just we are focused on the wrong thing. However, you did also address the issue that, well, it is important in some things, because if I need to rent an apartment, the landlord's going to do a credit check, maybe. And if my credit score is lower than that other person, well, maybe they'll give the apartment to the other person.
Right.
So that would be a reason why, okay, I don't want to be playing the game. I don't really want to be incurring a lot of debt, but there is a reason to have a decent credit score. And
unfortunately, too, that's sometimes an unfortunate thing, because if you're looking at someone with a better credit score, that doesn't mean they have enough cash flow to pay off all their debts. It means that they're at least paying their minimums, so they have a good credit score, but it doesn't mean they have a good cash flow.
Okay, so I've got $100,000 worth of debt on my 10 credit cards, and every month I make the minimum payment.
Great credit score, not credit worthy.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So there's a big difference between so from the lender's point of view, they love me because they're making tons of interest, and that's what inflates my credit score. And obviously we're oversimplifying. There's things like utilization that would factor into that.
Absolutely.
But the person who is paying everything off in full every month and doesn't have, isn't playing that game may not have as good a credit score. Okay, so back to the question everybody asks you: how long will it take to repair my credit? So what you gave me the technical answer, which is it's on your credit for this long. So in the case of a consumer proposal, 6 years maximum from when you file. Does that mean my credit score will be horrible for 6 years?
No.
What does it mean?
It means that the fact that you filed a proposal is on your credit bureau for the 6 years from the date of filing, 3 years from the date of completion, whichever is earlier. But it doesn't mean that you can't start to reestablish your credit rating, because you can. You can start to rebuild.
Let's talk about that then. So how do I start to rebuild? So let's take the scenario where I've just paid off my proposal. So I got it paid off in, let's say, 2 or 3 years. So it's still going to be on my credit report for another 3 years. What can I tangibly do right now to start improving my credit score? And I don't want to improve it because I want to get 12 more credit cards. It's because I'm going to be renting an apartment. I'm going to be buying a house. There's legitimate reasons why I want a decent credit score. So what are some tangible things I can do? That's
such a key point. When you're thinking about improving your credit score, you want to know why. If it's just because, you're likely going to end up in the debt cycle again. But when you have a goal that's important to you, you will use your credit more wisely and have a better credit score. So I often tell people, first you want to check your credit report to make sure that it's reflected correctly. You want to make sure that if you've completed your proposal, that it's showing that it's complete and everything looks in line. And if you have questions, you can always show it to your trustee, and they can go through that with you.
And just on that point then, how hard is what you're describing?
Not hard. No.
So what do I got to do?
When you're checking your credit report.
Well, how do I get it?
Oh, Equifax or TransUnion. So they both have access to an online report that you can get for free. So if you're in the section where it's asking you for a credit card, then you're paying for it and you don't have to. I don't pay for my credit report, but you just pop online. For TransUnion, you log in to become a member. and then you just get it free once a month. It's called a consumer disclosure report.
Yeah, and Equifax has a similar system where you're creating an account with them, but you're right, there's the free account, and by law, they are required to give you your credit report once a year.
Right.
Like that's the law. And in most cases, they'll give it to you as often as you ask for it.
Online. In paper, it's once a year, and then online they do.
And there's a number of banks have the credit report from either TransUnion or Equifax built into their app.
Yep.
So, and again, if you're a client of ours, we walk you through all this. We tell you which banks, we got all the lists and everything. So you may be able to just go right onto your banking app and pull it up yourself. But otherwise, you create an account. So with TransUnion, for example, you go online, here's my name, and it'll ask you some verification questions. Did you ever live at one of these 3 addresses? Did you ever have an account with this?
Right.
And if you get the answers right, boom, you're in, and you can see your credit report. There is the paid version,
which gives you a score. Don't get sucked in.
And that's the difference. So the paid version, which is like, I don't know, $20 a month or whatever.
Oh, with fraud alert, and I shouldn't do quotations. It has a fraud alert, but
yeah.
Honestly,
so there are other things that it potentially has. And I guess if you are, I'm buying a house in a year and I have to keep a very close eye on my credit report and I want to game the system to get my credit score as high as possible. Okay, fine. Maybe you're going to pay the $20 a month so you can track it, or go to a bank that has the credit score built into it and get it for free.
Right.
But the free version shows you what's on your credit report. It doesn't show you the final score. But if you clean up all the messes that are on your credit report, then that's going to impact your credit score anyways. So your credit score is obviously based on what debt you have, but if your history matters. So if you've lived at the same place for 3 years, you want your credit report to show that address as being there for 3 years, because history makes your credit score higher. If you've had that credit card for 2 years, same thing. If you've been working at the same employer.
Right.
So those are obvious things you can fix to make your score higher.
Yeah.
And obviously correcting the errors.
Yes.
Okay, so I kind of diverted you there. The question was, what can I do to begin rebuilding? So step number 1, you said, get a copy of your credit report. You don't have to pay for it. You can get the free version, go through, correct any errors that are on it. Okay, that was step 1. What would step 2 be?
Step 2, you're looking at getting a secured credit card. That's probably the easiest way to start that process of getting access to credit. And a secured card is different than a prepaid card. Prepaid card is cash on plastic. It depletes to 0, and then there's nothing on it. You could throw out the card. You're not losing anything. A secured card, you're giving them money that they hold, and you get a card. It has an interest rate. You have to pay it every month. Right? Same thing. You just basically treat it like an unsecured credit card. And that would be how I would start the process, because you're more likely to get a yes with a secured card because everyone's secured. If you can't pay it, you say, hey, I can't pay it, cancel the card. They take the money, they pay it off. No one's at a loss.
There's no risk to the lender because, so a typical secured card is you put $500, $1,000 on deposit. Yeah. And they give you a card with a $1,000 limit. You can use it just like a regular credit card. You pay it off in full every month. They are holding that $1,000 in as a security deposit.
Yeah, and you want to be careful too, because some main banks don't want to deal with you if you've ever had a bankruptcy on your credit report for the past 7 years. So I have had feedback from people saying, I went to a main bank, I applied for a secured card, and I got rejected. You can ask them why you got rejected, but to me it seems ridiculous because it's secured. Well, but you want to make sure if you're applying for a main bank, you're asking them up front before you make the application, are you willing to deal with someone who's reestablishing their credit rating?
Yeah, and the big 5 banks, which is who you're referring to, everybody knows who they are. They aren't sponsors of this show, so we don't mention them. They're not in the secured card business. It's a hassle for them. They don't want to have to be monitored. It's just not their thing.
Well, they do say that they do them, though.
They do them, and if it's to their benefit, then they will do it. There are a couple of places, and again, I'm not going to mention their names on here. You can, if you're a client, we tell you all this, but that specialize in secured cards. Now, here's my counter to what you just said. So I agree with your basic premise that if the only thing I qualify for is a secured card, then I guess that's what I got to get if I want to start reestablishing.
Right.
And maybe I just need a credit card because I got to pay for stuff, my Netflix subscription, I got to book a hotel, whatever. So if that is my only option, then yeah, that's kind of what I got to do. But the downside to a secured card is, number one, I've just given up $500 or $1,000.
Exactly.
So if I am renting an apartment, I now don't have that $1,000 to put towards my first and last month's rent, which maybe is going to make it harder to rent the apartment.
Right.
So cash is, I still think, king. Second problem is, I believe all of these cards charge a monthly fee.
Not all of them. I had called one of them. One of them didn't answer. The other one did. And it was, if you had, and that's why it's good to have a conversation with the company before you're applying, because they'll say, well, we can do a very high interest rate with no annual fee. No, like it's just a normal card. The only thing is the annual fee. But if you do a high interest rate, then there's no annual fee, which is fine if you're going to pay off your balance every month. Mm-hmm. And then if you think you might carry a balance, you could actually pay an annual fee and they'll lower the interest rate. So they have a sliding scale. So I think whatever company you're thinking of choosing, call them first.
I think that's excellent advice. Do some research because if you're going to be paying X number of dollars a month for the card, and you're giving a security deposit, is it worth it to you? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Now, here's my other counterpoint to what you said. There are credit card companies that will give you a small unsecured card.
Yes.
Even while you are in your proposal.
That's right.
And so, if my choice is I can get an unsecured card with a $300 limit, or a secured card with a $1,000 limit, but I have to put up $1,000 in security, maybe I'm better off with the unsecured card.
Yeah.
Maybe not. Again, I think your point is the key one. Do some research. What are the costs? Make sure you understand how it all works, so that you're making the right decision. And
you want to make sure too that you're most likely going to get accepted. Mm-hmm. So if you're really concerned because your score is low, then a secured card gives you that added benefit. If you're kind of in the moderately low range, then you might get approved for that other unsecured card, then that's your better choice.
Yeah, and again, when you do a proposal with us, we sit down with you and we go, okay, let's tell you exactly the names and everything.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not going to do it on this show because I don't want to get sued if somebody doesn't get approved, but that's typically how it works. But I agree. You got to do your research. Like, make sure you understand what you're getting yourself into. Now, here's another opinion I have, and you can tell me if you agree that this is fact or not. The biggest bump in your credit score occurs after you complete your proposal. So you finish your proposal based on the data I have seen, and I've seen a lot of data on this. The typical credit score bump is somewhere between 50 and 75 points when your proposal is completed. So even if you did absolutely nothing, you didn't reestablish credit, didn't get a new credit card, whatever, that's when the bump happens.
Yeah.
Getting a credit card while you're in the proposal may have a small impact on your credit score, but applying for that credit card once the proposal is done has a much bigger bump in your credit score. So if you're going to you want to reestablish credit, if you can wait till the proposal is done and then apply, whether it's that secured card or the unsecured card, that's when you're going to get the biggest bang for the buck. So if we take credit card company ABC, which is not their real name, I'm just making this up, they might give you a $300 credit card when there's a year to go in your proposal.
Right.
They will almost for sure give you that same credit card when your proposal is done. Getting it after your proposal is done might give you a 60-point bump in your score. Getting it while you're in the proposal might only give you a 10 or 20-point score. I made those numbers up too.
Right.
So is there an advantage to waiting as long as possible until the proposal's done? Or do you advise people, no, start getting credit as soon as possible?
Well, I actually typically advise people to strategize, think about what works best for you. I mean, if their main goal is, I want to have a house, I'm like, well, then your focus is to save as much money as possible, and know that, you need 2 years of good credit history, 2 credit lines, other things that we've talked about. So then you're strategizing when to start. I think it's really important because it shows that you are the one in control and making the choice. So you don't have to start right away. You can wait.
I like that. Strategize. So again, don't be listening to some, guy and girl on some podcast who are saying, oh, you should do this. You should do that. Okay, well, everybody's situation is different.
Right.
And so if I said to you, okay, Maureen, my goal, I don't need credit now. I take the bus to work. I don't need to worry about a car. I live in an apartment. It's all good.
Yeah.
But 10 years from now, I would like to be in a position to buy a house.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I don't need to be in a big panic about getting my credit score up today then, do I?
No.
And so if someone tells me that is their scenario, I'd say, well, I'd be thinking about things like the home buyers program, the tax-free home savings account, which Ted and I did a podcast on a couple of months ago. Putting money into an RSP, because you can also use that towards a home. Putting money in a TFSA, like those would be much more important to me than I better put some money on a secured card and let it sit there. Exactly. So I agree. Where am I trying to get to, and then back it up from there?
Yeah. If you're doing something because of a fear-based belief, then it's usually not going to work out to your best interest.
That sounds deep. It's probably true too.
Yeah.
So don't be doing it based on fear, based on where you're going forwards with it. So I said earlier that if you do absolutely nothing, your proposal ends, you're going to get somewhere between a 50 and 75 point bump in your credit score.
Usually because it goes from a 9 to a 7.
Yes, right. And because you were so low to begin with,
right.
your credit score might have been 400 or 500 or something.
Or the ones that reported late payments or that it was open, they've closed it.
And so that alone is going to cause the bump.
Yeah. I've actually had someone have their credit score increase after they filed the proposal. Not when they were done, but after they filed, because everyone was reporting late payments and open. And then when they filed the proposal, half of its creditors had just stopped reporting and closed the debt. And so it pumped up his score.
Wow. And that probably changes utilization too. So that would also affect it.
Yeah.
So will credit just fix itself then? Can I just say, you know what, I'm just going to do nothing and let it fix itself?
No, it doesn't. You have to use it. Like the credit score is a reflection of how you use the credit that's available to you. How are you using debt? So if you do nothing, then it won't improve because you've done nothing to do it.
So I have to actually take tangible steps. Now that's assuming that I actually want to improve my credit.
Yeah.
I mean, we do lots of work for people. Well, I'm 70 years old. I'm not buying a house. I'm not buying a car. I don't need any credit. Okay, then don't worry about it.
Exactly.
Then don't
100%.
Don't obsess over it.
Yeah.
But if you may end up needing to rent an apartment, or there may be some reason why credit is important, okay, then you focus on it as much as you need to, but again, no more.
Yeah, exactly. And doing it in a way, and that's the problem too, is that knowing your risk level with certain types of debt. Like if you're a splurge buyer and you're like, oh, I have this credit card, I'll pay it later. And then all of a sudden you're in this cycle of, I need the credit card, I used it, I'll pay it back later. I always find something in life always comes up again. It's like, oh yeah, remember when you were going to pay that back? Well, this else happened. And then you're caught in the cycle. So sometimes if you are really worried, but you do need to reestablish a credit rating because you do want to move and whatnot, you're getting maybe a secured card because that gives you security to know that no matter what happens, that debt is paid off. You're putting a subscription on it that you already have in your budget, and you have a monthly payment go to the card, and you never take the card with you. Put it in an ice block, cut it in half, leave it in the sock drawer, and then it's reestablishing the credit rating that you need so you can move. It's secured so you know you won't have debt, and then you have peace of mind knowing that you've supported yourself and you're not giving your access to tap into problems.
Yeah, which means you're strategizing yourself. And there is no subscription fee for Debt Free in 30. Just so everyone knows, it's completely free. So, okay, so back to the question then about how I can boost my credit score then. So start by checking your credit report, make sure there's no errors on it. Right. And then you start by reestablishing, maybe it's with a small unsecured card, maybe it's with a secured card. From there,
pay your bills on time.
Bills on time. So
whack myself for that.
And that's important. And again, people don't understand the massive negative impact something like a cell phone bill that you're paying late.
Right.
Because it's not credit. They're not loaning you money.
Unless you're buying a phone.
Well, maybe. Yeah. But it's $100 a month or whatever your cell phone bill is.
Yeah.
And, they set it up so you got to pay it on the 18th of every month, but I don't get paid till the 21st. So I'm always 3 days late every month. Yeah, well, that report says late. And if you can't handle a $100 a month payment, then that really looks bad. So get that paid on time.
Exactly. I always tell people, I'm like, your utilities, your cell phone bill, paying them on time doesn't help your score as that much, right? But not paying them hurts your score a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if you're thinking of having a mortgage or whatnot, the mortgage company is going to look at it and go, you can't even pay your cell phone bill on time. What makes you I think that you're going to pay your mortgage on time.
I totally agree. The small numbers can get you into big trouble. So
grammar.
Yeah, we'll edit it out before it goes to air. Okay, now we already talked about credit utilization. I think people understand that. You want your utilization to be as low as possible. So if I have a $10,000 limit on my credit card, the closer I am to zero, the better.
Right.
And even though I can run it up to $10,000 and pay it every month, I'm fine. I'm not paying any interest. That's good. But my credit report shows a 100% utilization. That's going to lower your credit score. So I personally pay my credit card every time I get paid.
Right.
So here at Hoy's Michaelis, we get paid twice a month. So every payday, whatever's owing on my credit card, it gets completely paid off. So I'm never more than 15 days into it. And
right.
So as a result, my utilization stays really low. We don't have time to do 40 minutes on bad things to not do, but I think you would agree that taking on a whole lot more credit cards just so you can keep your utilization low, not a good idea. You're not a fan. Not a fan.
Not a fan.
Because you're just going to get yourself into more trouble. It's too risky.
Exactly. It's very risky because a lot of time you start to think, you just get in that moment where you're like, I need to do this. I have to do this. And I have this card. Okay, I'm going to do it. And then all of a sudden now you have two cards with an amount on it that you can't pay back. And now you're focusing on getting to the minimums or just above the minimum. So the risk is too high that you will use them. So it's better to have one card, maybe two if you're looking at getting a house. And then just keeping it super low.
Yeah. And you already made the point that stuff happens.
Yeah, all the time.
It gets really tempting that, okay, well, now I can draw on that credit card and now I'm into that cycle again. So
yeah, and that's really hard too, because once you're in that cycle and you're like, okay, but now I want to shift gears and I want to make sure I have savings so I have financial stability, but I have this debt payment that I'm paying an interest on. And anyways, that's a whole probably other topic, but once you're using, I've told my kids this many times, I'm like, they're not yet at the age of having a credit card, but I want to imprint it in their brain. It's good to write on the credit card debt. It's a debt card, right? Credit card sounds very positive. It's a wonderful feeling. There's so much around it that we've been programmed to feel really good about credit, but it's debt. And when you say debt, it doesn't feel good. So remembering that whenever you use this card, it's debt.
Totally agree. And obviously the banks call them credit cards because that sounds positive.
Exactly.
But yes, if you think of it as a debt card, I'm borrowing money, that hopefully will tamp down your enthusiasm for it. So, okay, so final question for you. Is there any other practical advice we've missed? Is there anything we didn't talk about?
Probably lots.
Probably lots.
I didn't even look at our cue cards. I don't even know if we covered off.
We didn't look at the cue cards today, but for our paid subscribers, we give you access to our cue cards after the show, which we don't look at. Cards. So I guess the real point we're making here is credit can be repaired.
Absolutely. Yep. You can start during the proposal. You can start after. You just want to make sure you have an idea of why and a plan in place to do so that you're not in the same boat again. The sooner you try to get credit after filing, the higher the risk of getting a rejection because the creditors are looking at it going, but you just had to solve a credit problem. Why are you jumping in again? So the more time that you give yourself to live a cash life and kind of understand what your priorities are and where you want your money to go and set yourself up, then introducing the credit when it makes sense for a purpose, then you're more likely to have a huge amount of success.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's having a plan. We keep coming back to this. Obviously, our phone number at Hoyes Michaelis is 310 plan, so we're kind of hyped on it.
Yeah.
But why is it that credit is important to me? Why is my credit score important? Where am I trying to get to? And if I start working towards that, I can do it in a reasonable fashion.
Yeah.
My best advice to everyone is save some money.
Absolutely.
That's my advice. I mean, I wrote a whole book. If I had done it on a cue card, that would have been save money. And I understand that, we're in 2023. Costs are way up,
oh my God, yeah.
Recessions, the whole bit. There's all sorts of stuff happening. And so it's not easy. It's not as easy as maybe it was in the past to just be saving money. But
no, because it takes a reprioritization as well. And we don't always want to do that. Life is stressful. I just need to get through this and I'll think about it later. And so it's having that moment to go, nope, wait, this is what's important. And if that's what's important to you, you focus on that plan and you set it a time frame. And then, and chunk it down in small bits.
Work towards it.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I think that is fantastic advice. So there you go. That is your top credit repair questions answered. Don't focus on it. Don't, become obsessed about it. Focus on it. Have a plan.
Yeah.
But take a look at the big picture too. Having a lot of money in your savings account does not help your credit score, but it helps you.
Absolutely.
I think if you focus on that, you're in good shape.
Yeah.
Maureen, thank you for making the long drive from the Ottawa region here to Kitchener in the studio today. Thanks for being here. Thank you. That was Maureen Parent. We will put links in the show notes. If you want to track her down, you can just go to hoyes.com, type in Maureen, and you can send her an email if you're in the Ottawa area and need someone to help with your issues, or if you got any other questions, she's happy to answer them. We have a new podcast. Every Saturday morning, it comes out on YouTube and on all the audio platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever it is you listen to. So if you're watching this on YouTube, click the link, you know what all those buttons are, right? Notification and share and subscribe and all that sort of stuff. So you get notified every week. You can subscribe, obviously, on the audio platform as well. And we are happy to chat with you every week. That is our show for today. That was Debt Free in 30. Thanks for listening.